The soil was warm between my fingers, the kind of warm that promised tomatoes and thyme if you treated it right. I was halfway through the herb bed when my phone buzzed. Mara's name. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. "No, hello." Just her clipped voice, like I was a delivery service she forgot to rate. "We're coming next week with 6 guests. You can take the shed or head back to the city." I said nothing at first. I could hear Brendan in the background, his voice muffled, unsure. But not once did he step in. Not once did he say, "That's enough, Mara." He didn't even say hello. I looked across the yard. The porch swing still needed chains. I had bought it as a gift to myself, something to sit on while the sun set behind the ridge and the goats settled down. I hadn't even used it yet. "Just for a few weeks," she added, like it was some gracious offer. "They need space. Aaron's doing a detox. Elise has migraines. And Brendan said, 'You have all that land.'" All that land, like I hadn't bought it with my own pension. Like it didn't cost me anything to start over at 67. No history here, no childhood memories. Just a patch of land I had built into peace. I didn't argue. Didn't ask why 6 grown adults couldn't get a hotel. I just said, "All right," and ended the call. The wind shifted behind me. One of the goats bleated lazily, unaware of the invasion ahead. I stood, wiped my palms again, and walked toward the barn. The air changed when I stepped inside. Cooler, still familiar. I reached for the old feed ledger and flipped to a blank page. They were coming, and I needed to prepare, just not the way they expected. I walked through the house slowly that evening, the boards creaking beneath my steps like they remembered each stroke of paint I laid down with tired hands. Every corner of this place wore my fingerprint. White trim, butter yellow kitchen tile backsplash that took me 3 weekends and 2 cracked knuckles. I remembered working late nights, cleaning classrooms, and scrubbing vomit off school floors, just to gather enough for the down payment. Not once had Brendan or Mara asked how it was going. Not once had they visited, sent a card, or asked if I was warm in winter. But now suddenly it was all that land and too much space for one person. I didn't let myself dwell on the insult. I focused on the facts. They were coming, and I had things to do. The guest sheets, my softest ones, 600 thread count, were folded and tucked into storage. In their place, I laid down scratchy old wool blankets from the emergency kit. Still clean, just not cozy. The Wi-Fi router went into the back of my filing cabinet. I labeled the plug, "Don't touch unless you're the one paying the bill." The espresso machine was boxed and taped. A $19 drip pot took its place, along with a tin of half-stale store-brand grounds. I turned the thermostat down to 58 for nights and up to 84 during the day. Just enough to irritate, not enough to fix. Then I picked up the phone and called Royce. He answered on the second ring. "This Fanny or the goat police?" "I might need to borrow a few friends," I said. "Brown ones or loud ones?" "Both." We agreed on a time. He'd bring them over the night before. I had plenty of hay. The last thing I did was turn on the porch light and sit for a moment on the swing I finally finished hanging. I let it creak gently under me, not rocking too much, just breathing. They wanted space. They were about to get it, and the swing would still be mine when they were gone. The gravel gave them away before the engine stopped. I watched it all from the motel window, coffee in hand, feet tucked under the blanket. 2 black SUVs, polished like parade floats, and 1 oversized rental van chugged up my drive like royalty arriving to a castle they didn't build. Mara stepped out first. Silk trousers, open-toe heels, sunglasses big enough to reflect her own ego back at her. Behind her came the rest. 3 cousins, 1 boyfriend, a guy holding a ring light, and a cousin named Devin already filming the dusty barn like it was exotic wildlife. Brendan came last, slower, shoulders tight, like even his body wasn't sure he wanted to be there. He ducked beneath the porch rail and lifted the ceramic frog. I'd left the key there on purpose. I wanted to see who he'd become when no one told him who to be. He found the key like I knew he would. The door creaked open. The screaming started fast. A goat blinked at them from the hallway, perfectly still, one of Royce's louder girls. In the living room, a hen flapped her way across the rug like she owned it. Near the kitchen, hay rustled. Someone had discovered the 2 lambs chewing gently on a fake plant arrangement. Mara's voice shot through the speakers on my laptop. "Is this a joke?" "Brendan." No answer. He stood frozen in the entryway, suitcase dangling from one hand, expression unreadable. Maybe he was counting the animals. Maybe he was counting his regrets. A thud. Someone dropped a designer bag. The goat bleated. A cousin yelled about allergies. Mara again, sharp. "Brendan, what is this?" Still nothing. I took another sip of motel coffee and muted the feed. The silence felt earned. Let them explore, let them rearrange the mess like it was mine. Back at the house, the goats were just getting started. The motel room was quiet except for the hum of the heater. I balanced my laptop on my knees and opened the camera feed. Grainy, yes, but clear enough to see every expression. Mara stood in my kitchen like a director on set, one hand on her hip, the other waving as she spoke to the cluster of relatives sprawled on my furniture. "Once she gives up, we'll flip it," she said, her voice crisp even through the small speaker. "Add a fire pit. We can have it ready in 2 months." No laughter, no pushback from Brendan. He just stood there, head down, scrolling his phone as if pretending not to hear. Not even a token protest. Again, I felt something cold move through me. Not shock exactly, but the confirmation of what I already knew. They weren't just visiting, they were planning a takeover. I clicked the record button on my screen. The file name popped up automatically. Kitchen feed, 8:37 p.m. I saved it to a new folder labeled Evidence. Then I picked up my phone and called Elaine, my attorney. She'd been with me through the closing on the farm and knew every clause. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "They're trying to flip it," I said. "I have footage." Her voice came back steady. "The deed is clean, Fanny. Sole owner. And don't forget the trust language we built in. Beneficiaries can be removed for misuse or disrespect. It's all there." "I remember," I said. By the time dawn pushed through the motel curtains, my email chimed with draft documents. 2 envelopes ready for courier delivery, legal ink waiting for signatures. I closed the laptop, slid my phone into my bag, and stared at the muted screen for a long time. The kitchen on the feed was empty now. Chairs pushed back, hay scattered like confetti. Mara's designer bag sat on my counter, one strap chewed. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, and picked up my car keys. It was time to drive back. The papers were ready, and so was I. The courier's truck rumbled up the road just past noon. I was already back at the farm, seated on the porch with a cup of strong coffee and no plans to offer anyone explanations. He handed me 2 envelopes, each thick and heavy with consequence. One labeled Mara Sanders, the other Brendan Crowley. I didn't need to read them again, but I did anyway. Inside, formal notice revoking any future claim to the property. Legal clause enforcing permanent restriction against short-term rental use. A clear warning. Further attempts to repurpose or monetize the land would be considered trespass, with full legal action to follow. Each page had my name printed in black ink, backed by the signature of my attorney, and the trust documents Adam had helped me finalize before he passed. Everything airtight. No wiggle room, no loopholes. I placed the envelopes on the hall table, right beside the ceramic frog Brendan once used to find the key. Seemed fitting? I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't answer the string of missed calls lighting up my phone. Instead, I walked through the house slowly, eyes sweeping across the remnants they left behind. A shattered pair of sunglasses under the couch, a spilled bottle of face toner near the fireplace, hay mixed with glitter from someone's travel pillow. One of the goats had left a parting gift in the guest wing, right beside a luxury duffel bag someone had forgotten in the rush to leave. I didn't clean it, not yet. I walked to the kitchen, opened the windows, and let the air move through. Then I poured the rest of the coffee, added a splash of milk, and walked back outside. The courier had pulled away. The envelopes sat where I'd left them, and the wind felt clearer somehow, like it had decided whose side it was on. I sat down on the porch swing and watched the road, waiting for the moment they'd come back, only to find everything they assumed was theirs no longer was. 3 days passed before I saw another car on the road. I'd already taken the goats back to Royce's pasture and scrubbed the kitchen until it smelled like soap and earth again. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet I'd bought it for. That afternoon, a dusty sedan eased into the drive. No black SUVs, no camera gear, no designer luggage, just Brendan stepping out slowly, like a man who'd been walking for miles. His shirt was wrinkled, hair uncombed, eyes dulled by something heavier than travel. "She left," he said before I could open my mouth. "Took the train to L.A., said she didn't marry into a barn." I nodded once. No triumph in it, no satisfaction. Just a fact landing where it belonged. I reached behind me and held out a broom. "You want to stay here?" I asked. "Start there." He stared at the broom for a second, then took it without a word. The sound of bristles against wood followed him down the hall as he began to sweep the mess his crowd had left behind. He didn't ask for a room, he didn't ask for coffee, he just worked. That evening, I watched him patch a hole in the fence with hands that looked softer than the tools he was holding. Later, he cooked a plain meal of beans and eggs without being asked, set 2 plates down, and ate in silence. No complaints, no excuses. He was up before sunrise the next morning, boots on, moving hay with slow determination. Not once did he mention the papers or the goats or Mara. Not once did he ask for forgiveness. I poured a second mug of coffee and left it on the railing without a word. By the time the sun crested the ridge, he was already in the barn, learning how to fit himself into a life he'd once dismissed. And for the first time in years, the sound of his work filled the space where my disappointment used to sit, carrying us both into whatever came next. Brendan started spending more time in the barn than in the house. I'd see him through the window, sleeves rolled up, sweat soaking through his shirt as he hauled hay or worked with the feed bins. He began keeping a small journal on the tack shelf. Nothing dramatic, just quick scribbles between chores. I never asked what he wrote. Roy stopped by now and then, showing him how to check hooves, mend fencing without wasting nails, and handle a stubborn goat without losing patience. Brendan listened, learned. Blisters formed where office hands had once held nothing heavier than a steering wheel. He didn't complain about those either. I watched, but I didn't praise him. Not yet. He hadn't earned that part. One morning, just after sunrise, I stepped outside and found 2 mugs sitting on the porch railing, one filled with coffee the way I like it. I didn't say a word, just picked it up and sat beside him. We drank in silence, the air cool and the light still soft across the pasture. Birds stirred in the distance, and the horses were starting to move through the field. He didn't look at me when he finally said it. I knew what she was doing, I just didn't know how to stop it. I didn't soften. You didn't try. He nodded once. No excuse, no defense, just the truth laid out like gravel under boots. We finished our coffee without another word. But something had shifted, maybe not healed, but acknowledged. That mattered more than anything he could have said with flowers or gifts. Later that afternoon, I passed the barn and saw him helping Royce fix the north gate, careful this time not to over-tighten the hinge. His movements were slower now, more thoughtful. The journal sat open on a bale of hay, pen tucked beside it, as if he planned to come back and write something down the moment his hands were clean. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone out there. Not completely. The wind started howling just past midnight, sharp and erratic, the kind that shakes windows and knocks over porch chairs. I was already halfway out of bed when I heard the crash. Metal on dirt, followed by the distinct bleat of panic. I grabbed my coat and flashlight, but by the time I reached the back door, Brendan was already up, pulling on boots. "It's the east fence," he said, out of breath but clear. Something snapped. I followed him into the dark, the storm biting through every layer of flannel and wool. We found one of the younger goats, Nina, dragging a hind leg, trembling wide-eyed in the mud. A broken panel of fencing lay nearby, twisted by the wind. "I'll get the truck," I said, already turning toward the shed. Brendan's hand stopped me. "You stay," he said. "I'll go. You've done enough storms." I hesitated, but something in his voice settled me. Not command, not ego, just commitment. He was gone for over 2 hours. The storm didn't let up. I stayed by Nana with dry blankets and calming words, doing what I could to keep her breathing even. Every gust of wind made me wonder if I'd misjudged him again. Then headlights sliced through the rain. The truck door slammed. Brendan staggered into the barn with a supply bag in one arm and a soaked flannel clinging to his skin. His knuckles were cracked and his hands shook as he knelt beside Nana. We worked together, splint, wrap, dose, until the goat finally settled onto the hay, pain easing. Brendan didn't collapse. He checked the barn lights, made sure the other animals were calm, then sat beside the feed pile, mud up to his knees like it was the most natural place in the world to be. I stood in the shadows and watched him breathe, steady and quiet. I remembered whispering once, years ago, I raised a boy who became a man too late. And now, in the soft light of a storm-warmed barn, I said it again. Only this time I added, but maybe not too late forever. Brendan knocked on the screen door just after breakfast, papers in hand. He didn't wait for me to invite him in, just stepped onto the porch like he belonged there again. "I need you to read this," he said. I set my coffee down and took the stack. The top page was titled, Conservation Easement Agreement. My heart stilled. He'd worked with the local land trust, filed the paperwork, had the soil surveys done, even included historical documentation of the original boundary lines. All of it legally binding. This locks it in, he said, quieter now. Even when you're gone. No resorts, no flipping, no one paving over the garden for a parking lot. I kept reading. Terms, clauses, perpetual protection. The kind of thing Adam used to talk about but never got around to formalizing. I want it to stay this way, Brendan said. I didn't build it. I didn't earn it, but I see it now. What it is, what it means. My fingers hovered over his signature at the bottom of the last page. His handwriting had changed. It was steadier than I remembered, firm without flourish, no performance. You sure? I asked. He nodded. This isn't about me anymore. It's about what matters. I looked at the garden, the field, the goats chasing each other past the old scarecrow that had lost its hat last week. I thought about what it had taken to get here. Every scraped knee, every missed weekend, every silent night waiting for someone to understand why I'd chosen this life. Then I picked up the pen. I signed. He didn't smile. Not in a showy way, just exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath for years. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Instead, he walked down the porch steps and went back to the barn, the papers still in my hand, my coffee now cold but untouched. A breeze lifted the corner of the easement where our names met in ink. Tomorrow I'd file it. Today I'd let the moment root itself. The porch is loud again, but it's not chaos. Brendan is out front with Royce, both of them hammering a gate that keeps sagging no matter how many times it gets fixed. A pot of coffee brews inside. One of Royce's goats naps near the steps like she owns the place. Probably does by now. I sit in my rocking chair, notebook on my lap. No grand declarations, no babies in arms, no one performing gratitude. Just this life, quiet, chosen, mine. Brendan passes by on his way to the barn, dust in his hair, new boots already scuffed and broken in. He doesn't ask for anything, doesn't try to explain away the past. He just moves, steadily, purposefully, like someone who knows they're finally walking their own path. Sometimes he pauses and asks about feed rotation. Other times he doesn't say a word, just nods as he walks by. I don't need more than that. I've learned silence can mean presence too. I flip the page in my notebook. It's not a will or a letter, just notes about what needs pruning in the back lot, which window still sticks when it rains, how much fencing we'll need before winter. Nothing dramatic, just things that matter. The screen door clacks behind me. Brendan sets a fresh cup of coffee on the rail without a word. I look up and meet his eyes. He nods once, I nod back. We watch the sun climb together, gold spilling over the pasture like warm paint. This place was never meant to be a monument or a prize. It was never about legacy in the way people usually mean it. It was always about doing the work, holding the space, mending what others break without apology. I take a sip of the second cup and lean back, the chair creaking beneath me like an old friend, telling me I've done enough for today. Some things, I say into the morning, aren't inherited. They're earned, every bit of them. The wind answers by lifting the corner of my notebook. I let it.